My story begins when I was about 15, living in Leeds, Massachusetts with my parents. At the time, my parents' home had a large backyard, and my mom owned 3 pet ducks that would roam around foraging for insects. Our neighbors across the street owned a black dog that would sometimes get loose and run into our yard and chase the ducks. In response, the ducks would run to the driveway of our yard and hide underneath one of the parked cars where the dog couldn't get to them. This was more of a nuisance to us and the ducks than anything else, as we were all very fond of the ducks and worried that the dog might hurt them should they ever reach their safe place in time. On the day in question, a Saturday morning, I was in my room somewhere between the halfway point of just waking up and still coming out of sleep when I heard the familiar panicked quacking of the ducks outside. I knew the sound meant that the ducks were afraid of something, and when I heard the jingling of a collar tag, I knew that the dog from across the street was loose and chasing them again. For some reason, this aroused a sense of injustice in me, and I sprang out of bed in nothing but my underwear and angrily headed down the stairs. I walked into the living room, past my parents, my dad, who was sitting in his usual reclining chair watching television, and my mom, positioned on a rubber mat performing her morning aerobics routine. I passed by them without saying anything, and they didn't say anything to me. I grabbed the first object I laid eyes on to throw at the dog to scare him away, which in this case happened to be a 9-volt battery, laying on the kitchen table just before I reached the front door. I figured it was just heavy enough to get some momentum going and cause some damage. As I opened the door, one of the ducks came out from under the car in the driveway and gave a prolonged quack, which is supposed to be a form of greeting in duck speak, almost as if to say, "Thank God you're here." Sure enough, I spotted the dog nearby and hurled the 9-volt at him, and he retreated back across the street. I walked back upstairs to my room, once again passing my parents without saying anything to them nor them to me. I fell back into my bed and into sleep. I later awoke to the sound of my mother's voice as she poked her head in through my bedroom door. "Good morning," she said in her usual cheerful voice. "Good morning," I said groggily. "I saved your ducks," I added. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Oh, that stupid dog from across the street was out there again chasing them, and I went outside and shooed him away." "When did this happen?" "This morning." "This morning? Are you sure about that?" "Yeah, I'm sure," she chuckled. "Honey, I think you were dreaming. Your dad and I have been downstairs all morning. We haven't seen you once." Odd, I thought. "What are you talking about? I walked right past you guys," I said incredulously. "Okay, what were we doing?" she asked skeptically. "You were doing your aerobics routine." "Yeah." "And Dad was sitting in his reclining chair." "Yeah. Did we say anything to you?" "No, I just walked past you." "Well, yeah, that's true, but Marlon, we've been downstairs all morning, and this is the first I've seen you. I'm sorry, but I think you dreamed all that." "No way," I said in disbelief. I got out of bed rethinking what happened and could not believe that it was a dream. Surely they just didn't notice me. Although it did seem odd that I would come walking down in my underwear and for them to not say anything. Furthermore, although I have certainly had my share of lucid dreams in my life, I have never woken up and been unable to distinguish a dream from a real memory. Even if I truly believed the dream was really happening at the time of having it, I have never woken up and still thought that it actually happened. In total disbelief, I got dressed and went outside to look for evidence. The first thing I noticed was that the ducks had soot on their backs, which meant that they had in fact been hiding under the truck recently. Still, I could have just heard the sound of them quacking from my room and then dreamt that I got up and went outside. But then as I walked out into the driveway, I found, lying on the ground, the 9-volt battery that I had supposedly thrown. Maybe it could have just been a random battery that happened to be lying out there. And maybe my parents just happened to somehow not notice me coming downstairs first thing in the morning in my underwear and then going back up without any explanation. Maybe. Now, if someone had told me my dad had not noticed me walk by, I might believe it, as he sometimes gets very absorbed in his television. My mom, on the other hand, is a very sharp observer, and I would have a very hard time believing that she didn't notice her oldest son walk right by her twice without saying anything. The obvious explanation is that I dreamt it, somehow couldn't tell that it wasn't real, and then certain physical elements of the external world coincided with the events of my dream. That's plausible, right? Maybe not. I am certainly not a religious person by any means, but an experience like this is enough to make me second-guess the belief that the material world is all there is, and there is no such thing like the soul or the spirit. Certainly not one that can leave the physical body and begin moving 9-volt batteries around, right?